Hi everyone, welcome to A Ska Can You Can, my veteran-owned, amateur-run YouTube channel. So a while back, my wife and I made this custom Harry Potter box that holds the hardcover book set that we bought for our son. It became so popular on my Instagram and Facebook pages that we decided to build an identical one, and we're going to show you how we did it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rip down this 1/4 inch 4x8 sheet of plywood just to make it more manageable. Now some of the box stores will actually do this for you, and some of them sell what some of them call handy panels. So instead of getting a 4x8 sheet, you can get like 4x4 or 2x4 or 2x8 sheets of this. So if you don't have a pickup truck or you don't have a big table saw, you can go that route. So let's get to it. Now if you don't have a chop saw that has this much capacity to it, and you don't have a big table saw to make this, I guess, rip cut across the plywood, you can always use just a handheld circular saw and a straight edge. Has anybody seen my tape measure?
Satisfying.
Okay, we're going to make the first measurement, and we're going to use one of the books as a reference. I've got this part of the book at the bottom edge of the board, and I'm going to make a mark about where the spine of the book is. That'll give me a decent baseline.
The measurement is about 6 1/4 inches.
Now, I'm going to want to add a little over 1 inch for this, and I'll show you why. So when we set the book in, it goes in just like this. It sticks up just a little bit, and then when the lid closes, it's a good fit. We don't need a whole lot of wiggle room, just a little bit. But we also need to take into account that this plywood is a 1/4 inch, and there's a lip here that's also a 1/4 inch holding the plywood. You multiply that times 2, one for the top, one for the bottom, and you have 1 inch. We're going to add just a little bit to give us a little bit of wiggle room, and then we're going to make a cut. Okay, first I'm going to run the board through the table saw and just take a thin layer off so I have a nice straight edge to work on when I flip it around.
I'll cut this down to 7 1/2 inches, which is the final height of the box.
Now I have a nice flat side that I can put against the fence. Okay, so we have this much wiggle room right here to accommodate for the grooves that the plywood's going to go into, and the plywood, and just a little bit of wiggle room. The next thing is we got to figure out the dimensions of the stack this way and this way, so we can figure out how long to make the back, front, and sides of the box. Okay. So now we have to measure for the front and back of the box. So we're going to call this, I don't want to make it so tight that it's hard to get the books out, but I don't want it so loose where they're just kind of flopping around. So we're going to call this, nice and tight is less than 12. We'll call this 12 3/4. And remember, we have to add 1 1/2 inches to accommodate the rabbets. So 12 3/4 plus 1 1/2 is 14 1/4. So 14 1/4 is how long our front and back boards are going to be. Hi, buddy.
I just came out here because I wanted to come out.
Okay, so now we're going to measure the books this way, and I'm going to get about 9 1/4. We'll make that 9 1/2 to give us some wiggle room. And remember, we have to add 3/4 inch to accommodate half the thickness of the dado, or the rabbet, times 2. So 9.5 plus 3/4 is 10 1/4. I know I'm already getting a headache too. So 10 1/4 for the sides. Okay, I want to explain to you the reason we do the measurements the way we do when we use rabbet joinery. This is a rabbet joint, and that's how it fits together. So we have to take into account how far it goes this way when we do our measurements like this, and how far it goes in when we do our measurements like this. And that's how the other piece fits in there. And the reason we do a rabbet joint instead of just a butt joint is there's a lot more glue surface area to glue. So, rabbet joint. Or if you're in the UK, I think it's called a rebate. I always like to cut the ends of the boards off here because oftentimes they're painted and they've got nails or staples in them, so I just like to make a nice, nice clean edge. Two front pieces we're going to cut at 14 1/4. And I'll use this board to mark the next board. So those are nice and even. And my sides are going to be 10 1/4. And now we've got the two front and two side pieces. Okay, now in order to make the rabbet cut for the box, I'm going to use a dado stack. Now if you don't have a dado stack for your table saw, you can just use a single saw blade and make multiple passes to do that. But I have a dado stack and it saves time, so that's what I'm going to do.
Now, because I have to stack my dado blades up against the fence, I'm using the sacrificial board so I don't damage my actual fence. To make the rabbet cut, I want the width of the dado stack from the edge to the fence to be exactly the width of a board, and the height to be about half of that. Now, before I cut into my project pieces, I'm going to run this scrap piece through just to see if I need to make any adjustments.
Now I can feel with my fingers that I went just a hair past, so all I need to do is adjust the fence this way, make up for that tiny difference right there. There's this part of the board is proud of this part of the board, so I just need to take just a smidgen off, which is a technical term. Alright, just a scotch more. Perfect. Now we'll cut the rabbets on the front and back.
Now, take your time running these boards through the dado stack, keeping steady pressure downward and against the fence. I'm also running it back through a few times just to clean up the edges.
Okay, we've got the front pieces with the rabbets cut into them. And let's just do a little dry fit to see how everything went together. One of the things that I like about using rabbet joinery is once you have all this clamped up, it's sort of self-squaring. So the box will sort of on its own maintain nice 90-degree corners. So let's set the books in here and see how we did. Everything fits in there real good. We've got just enough wiggle room, I think, to be able to get your hands in there. I think it's going to work good. Now to, let's just cut the grooves now. So what we're going to do next is we're going to cut the grooves into the side pieces. This is a scrap that I have from a previous project, and we're going to use the scrap piece to fine tune how thick the groove is going to be. So the point of the groove is to hold the 1/4 inch plywood. Now again, you can do this with a single saw blade. If you don't have a dado stack, you just have to make multiple cuts. What we're going to do is we're going to put in a dado that's just slightly wider than this 1/4 inch piece of plywood. We want it wide enough so that you can actually get it into the groove, but not so wide where there's a lot of play. This is Coda, everybody. Say hi, Coda. Oh, you're a good boy. Yes, you're a good boy. Oh, yes. Coda's a good dog. He's a good dog. He doesn't like hanging out in the shop much, though. And there he goes. That's a horse. Okay, back to work. Like I said, I'm going to change out this dado stack for a thinner one to match the width of this piece of plywood. Always unplug your table saw when you're changing out blades. I already had the dado stack set to cut halfway through the thickness of a board, and when I'm cutting the grooves I want it to be about halfway through as well, so I'm going to leave that right where it's at. As far as where to put the groove is going to be about 1/4 inch, and I want another 1/4 inch of material to hold it in place. And that's what we have. It goes just like that. And we're going to be doing 2 grooves in each piece, both the side pieces and the back and front pieces. And what's nice is once you have all this set up, you can just run everything through all at once. Perfect. All right. Now I have to measure for the plywood that goes inside the grooves. So I have to take the grooves into consideration when I measure out the plywood. So let's do that. Okay, we have 2 pieces of plywood. Now, I can't just measure on the inside or the outside because the grooves go halfway in. So, the way I'm going to measure this is from the outside of this one to here. That'll take into account the plywood going halfway into this side and halfway into the other side. And I've got exactly 10 3/4 inches for the short side. And I'll do the same thing on the long side, going from the inside of the dado to the outside, where I've got exactly 13.5. Now those measurements might be a little bit too big or a little too snug, but that's okay. It's a lot easier to take wood away than to add wood back on once you've made a cut. So let's set that up. And we're gonna run this through the good side up. So I cut that the wrong way, but it's okay because I cut the long part first. I forgot about the grain direction, so I'm gonna recut the boards, but I can still use this one. Now I still got a little bit of tear out, but that's okay because these will be covered up by the grooves. So next, we're gonna cut this 10 3/4. There we have it. Top Okay, so I did make a mistake when making this piece. This measurement, the short measurement, should have been 3 1/4 inches, not 3 3/4 inches.
Actually, it's 13 1/4 inches, not 3 1/4 inches. I'll get it right eventually.
So, not a big deal. I made this too big, it's easy to make it smaller. So just double check your measurements, and I should probably do the same.
So just to be clear, the final dimensions of the plywood top and bottom are 13.5 by 10 1/4. And you might want to cut these a little bit oversized so you can slowly get down to their final dimensions for a nice good fit later. I'll also put a note in the description of all the dimensions.
All right, let's go check the fit. Now you'll be able to see how all of this fits together. And like I said before, I did cut these oversized, some of it on purpose and some of it on accident. But it's always better to cut it oversized and sneak up on that measurement than to cut it undersized, because there's not a whole lot you can do, especially with plywood, to add wood to it. So we're just going to set these in the grooves. Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, to set it all up, glue it up, let it dry overnight. It's always a good idea to have your clamps ready and a clamping strategy ready for when you clamp up. So, all right, I think I'm ready to glue it up. Now, I'm using Titebond 2. It's just the wood glue that all the other woodworking YouTubers use, and it's worked out well for me over the last couple of years. So. Okay, I think it's time for a time lapse. Make sure you spread the glue on all the surfaces, on both sides of this rabbet. Get extra glue all over the place. We'll be able to wipe it down later. Now, glue doesn't do too well on this end grain right here, but if you kind of force it into the fibers, it'll stick. Plus, that's one of the reasons why we use rabbet joints, is because there's so much glue surface. Kind of force it into the... Alright, we're putting this together here after we've glued it. You've got a little bit of working time here with this Titebond 2. Most wood glues have a certain amount of working time, so I actually did this once before. My battery ran out of my camcorder, so this is the second time I'm doing it. It's been about 5 minutes, and it still has some good working time in it left. So everything fits real good. I'm gonna grab a rag. Here we go. Old t-shirts make great shop rags. This is an old t-shirt that my mom just brought over from when I was a kid. So it's gonna get a second life as a shop rag. Scott B, champ, all right. Thanks, Mom. Just gonna wipe off the excess glue. The excess glue on the inside we'll have to scrape off. Squeeze out right here. Try to get as much of this now as you can. It's easier to wipe off excess glue than it is to get it when it's dry. If you can't, don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal, just a little bit easier. All right, I'm gonna go take this back over to the table saw tabletop. The table saw usually has the flattest surface in your shop, so that's what I'm going to do right now. Now to start clamping it up. All right, time-lapse montage. All right, looks good. I'm gonna put a square on it. Looks pretty good. I might need to adjust that a little bit. You can make little tweaks like that on the fly. That's pretty darn square. I'm gonna let this sit overnight, and once I'm done doing that, I'll make the cut for the lid using the table saw. It's been 24 hours. Okay, we've got a box. And I put the bottom in, the nice side facing up, but it doesn't really matter because when I open this up and we're done with it, we're actually going to line it with felt, so it didn't really matter which way the bottom part of the plywood went. Okay, so everything looks pretty good. I got a lot of glue I need to clean up, and of course I've got to cut the top off. The way I'm going to do that is on the table saw, so let's get going on that. Before I get started on that though, I'm going to go around and clean off any of the glue that's sticking up. Okay, so I'm just going to take a chisel and clean off some of the glue along the edges where I'm going to put it on the table saw. So. Alright, I think what I'm going to do is take a sander to some of these surfaces where I'm going to put it against the table saw, the tabletop of the table saw. Alright, so let me show you how we're going to cut the top off. So I'll move the fence 1 3/4 inches away from the blade, and we'll be cutting. Alright, 1 3/4 inches. I got my fence set up where I want it. I'm going to cut 3 sides of this box, and I'm going to add a wedge piece to prevent the top and bottom from pinching the saw blade. You'll see that in a second. So here we go. Before I cut this part off right here, I want to reinforce this part because I don't want this to pinch, and that could possibly pinch the blade in this. So we're going to tape a wedge in there using some masking tape. Just like that. Final cut. Okay, let's see how we did. Are you ready? Ta-da! All right. That piece off right there. Fits like a glove. So I'll just have to decide which side is going to be the front, which side is going to be the back. I think I'm going to have that side be the front, and then I'll just put a hinge on it and it'll open up just like that. Look at that. top still fits perfectly. So I got the measurements right, and we're going to sand it, stain it, line it with felt, add the hardware, and we should be good to go. Okay, I did want to go over one thing. When you're doing a box like this, be real careful when you're sanding the inside of the lid and where the lid meets the box. Because on this last one, I sort of got a little aggressive with the sanding, and it made where the lid matches up with the box a little bit uneven. So if you are going to sand this part of the box, lid and the box, I would recommend you use just hand sand with like a sanding block. What you could do is you could take a piece of sandpaper and wrap it around a stick like this so that it stays nice and straight.
Hello. This is gonna be on YouTube.
So I've got the box ready to get ready to sand, but before I do that, I have to get rid of some of the glue spots like this before I take the random orbit sander to the whole thing. We're going to use a chisel to remove some of the glue that's on here, and just be real careful when doing this. You don't want to gouge into the wood. The sandpaper can take care of a lot of this, but if it's stuff on the inside, like in the inside corners, you want to use a chisel to remove that. So I'm going to do that with a chisel, and then I'm going to sand it using increasingly higher grit sandpaper. I'm going to start out with 80 grit, then move on to 120, 180, and then 240. And let's get to it. I think it's time for a time lapse. This is what you're going to do. You're going to grab this. Okay, I'm going to hold the piece for you. You're going to grab this and you're just going to go back and forth, nice and smooth. Okay? Go ahead and grab a hold of it. Yep. Alright. You might want to grab it with both hands. Alright. Now, don't put any downward pressure on it. Let the tool do the work for you. Alright, I'm going to turn it on. It's going to be loud. Just hold on to it. Go back and forth.
It tickles!
It tickles?
Yes!
You're doing a good job. Good job. I got it.
Remember, like and subscribe and comment down below and share, please.
So what'd you think of this?
It tickled my hands because it was vibrating so much.
Tickled your hands? Alright. I'm going to do one more side, and then we'll go up a grit and keep doing that. I'm not going to show that on the video. So now I'm just going to take a tack cloth, which is just a sticky cloth, to get all the sawdust off of it before we stain. Okay, so the box is all sanded and ready for stain. Before we put the stain on, we're going to use a pre-stain conditioner, because if you apply just stain to pine, it tends to be blotchy. So there's a bunch of different techniques for applying stain, but I'm going to try my own technique this time. That was easy. Now that it's stained, we can pretty much decorate it with anything we want to. However, we recommend decals instead of stickers, because the stickers have a tendency to bubble and the edges have a tendency to peel up. So now that the decals are on, Desiree is going to put a clear coat on them, and that's going to do a couple things. Number one, it's going to protect the overall finish, but number two, it's going to further help prevent the edges of the decals from peeling up.
I don't remember how many coats I did of this last time.
Looking good, hon. So this is just a sticky back kind of thing?
Yep. This is about more than enough to do probably a couple boxes and cost. I can't remember how much I paid for that.
Hey, voiceover guy, how much did she pay for that?
Under 10 bucks.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So you just expose a little bit, get that set, and then peel back the rest?
That's the idea.
Use a smart cookie. Sweet. So that's the basic process.
Now you just gotta do that on all four sides. Bubbles. I have to get the bubbles up. No bubbles. I hate you. Okay, the box is together the way it goes. The rest is up to you. Okay?
Okie dokie. All right, I think Desiree did a fantastic job on the inside lining. Now I am going to put on the hardware. Now this is the same hardware that I used for the Harry Potter box, and I'm going to install it exactly the same. Now normally when you're doing hinges, you would use one of these. It's got a little centering jig with a drill in the middle of it. And what that would do is you would put that into the hinge and it would perfectly center the drill bit. I don't have one that's small enough for these little tiny screws, so I'm just gonna eyeball it and punch a little starter hole using an awl. Now you'll notice I didn't drill a pilot hole, and that is because the hardware is so small and I'm going into pine, which is really soft. Now if this was a hardwood like maple or oak, I'd probably want to drill a pilot hole, but to be quite honest, it's hard to get drill bits that small and to get drill bits that small to fit into regular drills. This will get your hand getting tired pretty quick, but if you want to use a drill to drive these in, you can, but don't drive them in all the way. Use a hand tool to tighten them in the rest of the way. All right. That looks pretty good. I'll do the next one and move on to the other hardware. If you're finding that your small type hardware like this is moving around, you can use blue painter's tape to sort of keep it exactly in place until you're done marking your holes. Beautiful.
A lot of the skills involved in making this I learned from an online woodworking class I took from Steve Ramsey called The Weekend Woodworker, and I'll put a link to that in the description.
Hey, not too shabby. If your alignment is just a hair off, you can kind of force it over just a little bit. These hinges, they're made of metal. They've got a little bit of give to them, so you kind of set them in the right place. But looks like I lined it up pretty good. Now I am going to check the center latch with a tape measure just because it's right in front. nice and still. Beautiful. And last, the handles. Oops. You didn't see that. And the owners will never know, unless of course they watch this video. All right. Well, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and share it. We're going to be building a house in the spring of 2021, so if you also want to share in that adventure, don't forget to subscribe.
And you can't forget to click that bell so you can never miss a video that we upload.
That's right. Thanks for watching, and remember, if I can do it,
You can
do it. That I decided to make a YouTube video and make... Hi everybody, welcome to Scott Can You Can, my amateur run. Hi everybody, welcome to Scott Can You Can, my veteran-owned amateur run YouTube channel. Now my wife is going to... I don't want to say... Take two. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a really fun build. Thanks for watching. If you like this, try it again.